All right. Hello and welcome to Chapter 16. Chapter 16 discusses security. So we're going to start on securing your Windows resources, specifically the sharing Windows resources. All right. So don't forget to take the notes as I asked you to and upload them as homework. All right. So securing Windows personal computer. Number one, we're going to talk. Please write the following down. This is important. It's not good enough to be a professional IT, to have a professional IT career when you don't know how to secure your devices. All right. So if you are into cybersecurity or anything, you have to know how to secure a personal computer to start with. This is your starting point before you start securing a network and so on. Anyway, so please don't write the following down. You can troubleshoot, fix devices, and if you can't secure them, it's all useless. So this is also an important chapter, I would think. Right? Okay, so write the following down. Number one, create strong passwords. What do I mean by strong password? Don't write small words, dictionary words. Make sure you use follow the complex rule that is having a minimum, I would say, 15 characters. Use capital letters, lowercase letters, and some numbers. And use a passphrase. Use a phrase, a sentence, instead of a regular password. All right? You can have group policy. This works within the Active Directory if you're on the server on a Windows domain to control the privileges and the computers and the users accessed. We will do that in a different class in details when we get into the Active Directory. We will create group policies and the network operating system that we offer in the fall. We get into details when we do this. There is the local group policy, and that's the gpedit.msc file, which contains a subset of policies in group policies. This subset applies only to the local computer or the local user. Then we have the local security policy, the seccpol.msc file. This contains a subset of policies in local group policies, which applies only to the local computer Windows security setting. Local security policy, it is an administrative tool, snapping in the control panel. Okay, so that's something to remember. All right, the number 5 thing that you want you to do, manage credentials. To manage these users' credentials, you want to open the Credential Manager applet in the control panel. The tool allows you to manage web credentials and Windows credentials. All right, so by the way, follow the applied concepts again. That's something that I want to emphasize. I know I didn't do that previously, but it is something important for you to do, I would think, if you really want to the hands-on portion of this course. I know we're going to be doing, of course, other labs as well. All right, so we're talking about right here, managing the credentials. All right, number 6, using BIOS UEFI passwords to authenticate users. Right, so the BIOS UEFI firmware on the motherboard offers you power-on passwords, which include an administrator supervisor password, which is required if you are required to change the BIOS setup, and the user password required to use the system BIOS UEFI setup. You just got to be very careful. If you forget the passwords, then no one will have access to the system as even before Windows boots up, right? So you probably have to do some jumping on the motherboard to really erase all the data in the BIOS if you forget the password. All right, number 7, you want to do the internet options. Okay, that's something that you would go through if you want. You can take a look at with the internet options. Get the menu bar. You can check out the HTTP secure, repair and disable. You can do general, go to the general tabs, the security tab, privacy tab, the connection tab, all within the Windows Edge or Windows Explorer. All right. Number 8, file and folder encryption. So let's talk about that. Where is the file? There you go. This is within the NTFS. Windows Encryption File System, EFS. Okay. The encryption works only with, like I said, with NTFS file system and business professional editions of Windows. If a folder is marked for encryption, every file created in the folder or copied to the folder will be encrypted. Remember that. An encrypted file remains encrypted if you move it from one encrypted folder to an unencrypted folder in the same or another FTS volume. To encrypt the folder or file, right-click it and open its property box. All right? So please write what I just said, and I think I just read it from somewhere in here. All right? So that's important. So this way you'll know on how to encrypt folders and files. All right? Bitlocker. Okay, that's also something important, and I want you to write down too. Bitlocker drive encryption in Windows Professional and Business editions locks down a hard drive by encrypting the entire Windows volume and any other volume on the drive and restricts access by requiring one of the two encryption keys. All right, so that will encrypt the whole hard drive. A similar feature of BitLocker to Go encrypts data on a USB flash drive, by the way, and restricts access by requiring a password. All right, so that's, and why do you want to do that? In case, you lose your laptop, or, well, not lose, somebody steals your hard drive, let's say. So you want to require computer authentication. For computer authentication, I want you to write this down. Many laptop computers have a chip on the motherboard called the TPM. Remember that? We discussed that, I think, early this semester. The TPM, which stands for the Trusted Platform Module Chip. The TPM chip holds the BitLocker encryption key, also called the startup key. If the hard drive is stalling or the laptop and installed in another computer, the data would be safe because the BitLocker would not allow access without the startup key stored in the TPM chip. So if somebody stole your hard drive and take it and put it somewhere else, they're not going to be able to decrypt the data because the key is on the TPM chip, which is on the motherboard, right? User authentication, you want to do that. Write this down as well. For computers that do not have a TPM, the startup key can be stored on a USB drive or any other storage device that reads before the OS, that can be read before the OS is loaded. And the flash drive must be installed before the computer boots. So you plug in the flash drive and then you can boot up. All right. Or you can have both, by the way. The computer authentication and the user authentication. Have the TPM module and the flash drive at the same time. That's, the multi-factor authentication. All right. That's nice. Let's talk about now the firewall. Firewall settings which protects the computer from intrusion and from attacking other computers. It is automatically configured when we set up security level for the network. All right, so please don't play around with Microsoft Windows Firewall. It's already been set for you. And if you remember when we talked about if you are setting a private or a public network, it will automatically configure itself to make sure that it's optimum. All right. In other classes, we'll be able to play around with it, change some settings, port forwarding, and things like that. But as far as right now, Windows Firewall settings should be left alone, right? Unless, you need to make some changes. But it's easy to get to anyway. All right. So that's for the firewalls. All personal firewalls should be in there, should be set up, and again, not touched. Again, configure. Well, here's an applying concept. You can play with your firewall if you want to. But when you're done, just make sure you reset everything. All right, controlling access to folders and files. So you can classify the user accounts in groups. So write the following down. A user account is when you use the user account applet in the control panel to manage user account, you can choose between two different types, administrator and a standard. Administrator, of course, is going to have supervisory rights. Standard is just not, just going to be a regular student, a regular user. Now, to create a user account using the computer management, first you have to open the computer management console. All right, under the local user and groups, you right-click on users and select a new user in the shortcut. All right, and I think you'll be able to right there. All right, then you have some built-in work groups. That's number 2. So method to assign permission to folders and files. So let's talk about that right here. All right, number 1, work group sharing. All privileges and permissions are set up on each local computer so that each computer manages access its files, folders, and printers shared on the peer-to-peer network. All right, so that's work group sharing. Domain controlling is all security should be managed by the network administrator for the entire network. Then you have shared permission. The permissions only for network users, and these permissions do not apply to local users of the computer. Shared permissions work on NTFS, FAT32, or XCFAT volumes and configured using the sharing tab in the folder's property box. Shared permissions apply to folder and its content, but not to the individual files. Okay, I want you to write at least the first sentence of each of what I'm talking about. NTFS permissions apply to the local users and network users and apply to both folders and individual and where am I here? I'm sorry. And individual files. The NTFS permissions work on NTFS volumes and configured using the security tab in the files folder property box. The security tab is missing on the property box of the folder or file for the FAT volume, which is true. All right, you can actually double check that if you have a FAT32 volume. Permission propagation is when permission is passed from the parent folder to the subfolder, which we call a child. Inherited permissions are permissions that are attained from the parent. So if you have a subfolder, the subfolder is the child, the actual folder is the parent. So if you set any privileges to the parent folder, everything is inherited to the child immediately. And finally, write this down also, then for NTFS volumes, NTFS permissions are the way to go, by the way, when you are customizing your system. So make sure it's better for share permissions and everything else. All right, another applied concept exercise that you can play around with. Okay, so we'll stop right here. I have a couple of things I want to say, and that will be it. So write down whatever I asked you to write down and upload that as homework, and I'll see you in chapter 16, video 2.